This poem is called Read This and Weep. And those who brought this message want every human who encounters it to ask one simple question. If you are feeling shocked by the news you're taking in these days, is it possible in this multiverse of infinite possibility that you've been listening to the wrong source? Those who brought this message want to suggest that you go back and listen again, or for the first time, if you have not yet, to the message they brought through in February of 2015 called This Revolution is Not Being Televised. Take that in again and ask yourself again, why are you still shocked? Simply shocked. Read this and weep. Searching for news that's truthful and complete? Read this and weep. If your response to the news that 75% of Earth's insects are disappearing hasn't been to weep, read this and weep. Read this and weep. If you're still moved to shock and awe at the news that the US of A is now paying its dues for all of the lies, for all of the theft, for genocide, slavery, and endless death to buffaloes, insects, fishes, and birds. So many songs no longer heard. To plains no longer fruitful, to mountains without tops, to all the children raped by their own moms and pops. If you say you can't imagine how all this horror came to be, read this and weep. Read this and weep. If you think the carnage you're witnessing today can all be laid at the feet of the latest gangsters, rapists, and thieves, if you're still kidding yourself that these thugs are simply stupid, read this and weep. Read this and weep. Because if you're still telling yourself that comforting but nonetheless obviously untrue story that those thugs are simply stupid, well, you gotta know there's a whole lot of people typing LMAO at you right this moment on a screen you're just not looking at. Read this and weep. If you seriously imagine that no one could really want to destroy this earth, no one could really want to leave her nothing but a lump of stinking, steaming rock, despite all the mountains of ageless evidence to the contrary, while witnessing with your own senses actions clearly and cleverly designed to do just that. If you're still kidding yourself that way, well, you gotta know you're surrounded by a whole lot of folks, not all of them human, not all of them living, not all of them what you call sentient, who think you're about as dumb as they come. Does that make you feel bad? Good! Read this and weep. Yeah, read this and weep. If you're still telling yourself there was nothing, no way you could possibly have known, you don't need any education. You don't need any time. And you certainly don't need any goddamn money to know this. If you have one of these, you've always had everything you need to know this truth. Why? Because the mothers gave you life. That's why. Why? Because the air has been reading you this news forever. Because the sacred wind that blows life into your blood has been telling this truth always. Why? Because the fire has been reading you this news forever. Because the divine flame of insight has been revealing this truth everywhere. Why? Because the water has been reading you this news forever. Because the sacred streams and oceans of feeling have always been singing this song and go on singing. Why? Because the earth has been reading you this news forever. Because the beings of stone and soil have never stopped drumming for this dance of truth. If you're just tuning in, who is to blame? Read this and weep. Why? Because your own soul has been reading you this news forever. If you didn't care to pay attention before now, who is to blame? Read this and weep, motherfuckers. If you say you couldn't possibly have known, you couldn't have done anything to halt this Holocaust, you couldn't possibly have done anything to stay this sixth mass extinction. Read this and weep, especially if you say that was because you had to work so hard for a living. Who told you this living was yours to make? Who told you it was your human right to make a living over the tortured screams and anguished pleas of others? Who told you there were any others here? And who believed? Look in the mirror. Behold the truth. Does that make you feel bad? Good. Then read this and weep. Read this and weep. If you say, it's too late now to stave off apocalypse, so you might as well just keep on doing what you've been doing. Are you the boss of time? Who told you it's ever too late to love better? Who told you love doesn't matter? Who told you there is anything that love cannot change? And who believed? Look in the mirror. Behold the truth. Does that make you feel bad? Good. Then read this and weep. Read this and weep. If you think this is violent, honey, really, if you still think this is violent, well, you've gone a long, long way down a road you never should have taken. Read this and weep, motherfuckers. If you think this is hate speech. If you think this is hate speech, well, you don't know hate. And you don't know love. Because you don't know yourself. Many have long been weeping for your willful self-ignorance. If you didn't care to listen, who is to blame? If you didn't care to change, who is to blame? Look in the mirror. Behold the truth. Does that make you feel bad? Good! Then read this and weep. Read this and weep. If you're still busy protesting that no one should talk to you like this. If you still think you shouldn't have to, take this. Read this and weep, motherfuckers. If you still recoil at the spectacle of a human female bringing through a message like this, if this tone still makes you cringe in memory of your terrible, awful, scary mommy who made you feel so bad all those times, so long ago. Really? Who is your mommy? Really? What is a woman? Really? What is a man? Really? Who are you? Really? If you haven't bothered to ask, let alone find good answers readily and locally available everywhere before now, who is to blame? Yeah, read this and weep, motherfuckers. You think nobody should talk to you like this? You think nobody can talk to you like this? You think you shouldn't have to hear this from anyone? Well, you can just cry yourself a river. Drown yourself in your very own poisonous plastic ocean. We trust you won't be unduly disturbed by the last moans of the dying cetaceans relinquishing their home. No way for them to make a living. No safe schools for their kids. No escape for them from how this earth now is. Cry yourself a river. Cry yourself a sea. Cry yourself way back home to where you need to be. Read this and weep, motherfuckers. Because the mothers have had enough. And since you wouldn't take their kindness, well, you'll have to take their rough. And if you still think you've got this rough, you're far gone indeed. And the only medicine available is just the one you need. Read this and weep.